Welcome today in Woburn. I'm your host, Samantha Stone. It is beautiful outside. It's gotten a little sticky and a little bit hot, but this is my kind of summer, more in the 70s than the 90s. As always, this week, we start off by welcoming Mayor Concannon. Welcome, Mike.
Hi, Samantha. How's it going?
Good. It's been a busy Monday, but that's a good thing. We're helping lots of people.
Yeah, Monday's one of the busier days of the week. We got a lot done today, though.
That's right. You know, one of the things that we are doing is there's a great program that we have access to through the Council of Aging, which is a nutrition program that gives $50 in coupons to local farmers markets. So I get the pleasure today of giving a couple of those out to folks. And for anybody who's interested in that, they should check out the Senior Center information that's available to them to see who qualifies. But we're excited to be part of that program.
Yeah, that's a great program. Thanks for helping out with that.
Yeah, excellent. I thought, you know, sometimes we think summer slows down, but the reality is when we're in the city and we've got lots of folks who are here, it doesn't slow down too much. And there are some important things on upcoming city council meetings. So the first week in August, we have an update around a public hearing around MBTA communities. And I thought this was a good chance to just do a quick check-in with you about where we are in that process.
Sure. So the city is moving towards compliance with the MBTA communities law. It's gotten a lot of air and press, and I think most people are somewhat familiar with the background on the law. It's basically a mandate from the state that communities where the MBTA has a presence, those communities are expected and required to provide zoning opportunities that would allow for multifamily housing. In other words, rezone a section of your city where it would be allowed by right to put up multifamily housing. Woburn is one of those communities. We are moving towards compliance. We have filed a proposed plan with language and a map. It's actually a zoning ordinance change. It's currently before the city council and the planning board. With any zoning ordinance change, those are the two bodies that take a look. Generally speaking, the planning board has first crack at it. That's what they do. They're the experts in zoning in the city. So they'll conduct a public hearing. They'll provide recommendations to the city council. Council can do what it wants with those recommendations. Obviously, they give certain deference and respect, but they have the opportunity and the right to determine ultimately what happens with that proposed zoning ordinance. So the matter is before the council at their first August meeting. We'll be there if there's any questions or particular discussion that the council would like to have at that point would be available. But I sense that because it's early on in the planning board process, and the council generally waits for the planning board to have its crack at such things, we're not going to get too deep just yet with the council. I know that Councilor Pappalardo is on today's show with you, and I would expect he's in agreement with my summary, but obviously if he sees differently, he can weigh in. But that's generally how these things go. The planning board does a deep dive. The council kind of waits on that ultimate recommendation from the planning board, and then the council will hold its own public hearing and make its own determinations on what happens with that proposed ordinance.
Excellent. Thank you for that update. We have had a few people who have called in, well, not called, they've written into me. They sent me notes asking what's going to happen to the old Wyman School now that it's been turned over to the city. I'm not sure we know yet, but I wanted to give you an opportunity to share a little bit about what we know so far.
Yeah, so 2 weeks ago now, maybe it was last school committee meeting, whenever that was. They did vote to make a determination that they no longer needed that building for educational purposes. And that's required by law. Before the city can do anything with an old school, it's required that the school committee make that determination. They have a vote and they notify the city of that, which they have done. So the next step would be for the city, through the city council and the mayor's office, to make a determination whether there's any other city use for that building. If there was a department that was desperately in search of a home and they felt that that building was a good fit and it was reasonable in the amount of money, needed to bring it up to speed, they would get first bite at that building, generally speaking. Given the condition of the building and, my sense that that situation doesn't currently exist right now in the city, I think the next steps are logically going to be the mayor sends down a request to the city council for authorization to dispose of the building. That would be step one in the process. There'd be discussions with the council about what options might exist. As we have done in the past with other buildings, I expect there'd be some community input, some neighborhood meetings maybe with ideas on what could be, and then ultimately a decision made, how do we dispose of that building? Assuming it's not a city reuse, it would likely be a sale at auction. But I don't want to get out over my skis here. We're early on in the process. We just got the word from the school committee. So we'll follow that process. And as I said, the city council is a major partner in all of that. In terms of what could be there someday, I would like to hear from the community, obviously like to hear from the city council, and rather not speculate just now what could be. I'd rather just keep an open mind and see how the process plays out.
Excellent. Yeah, we don't want to get ahead of ourselves there for sure. Thank you for sort of helping people understand, though, what the process looks like and the steps that will be taken into account and how things will be reviewed. Speaking of sort of older buildings, there was 2 fire stations that were taken out of commission, one of which was auctioned and sold. And then there was another one that I believe we have not yet auctioned. But folks are kind of curious. I think there were some older fire stations that needed a little TLC. We rebuilt, obviously, and invested heavily both in terms of staff and adding new firefighters, but also in the HQ. But we did have some work that we've talked about in the past that needs to get done to some of the older stations. How did that fit into this year's capital budget? Are there things that we might be moving forward on this year with that?
Well, there's a lot to be discussed in that topic. I would start by saying stations 2 and 3, North Woburn and Central Square, were decommissioned as part of an overall plan that called for rebuilding and I guess redistricting is that word.
Is that a scary word to use? I don't know.
Yeah, of the fire districts, so to speak. We have begun to implement a plan that called for stations 2 and 3 to no longer be used, the headquarters to assume much of that district and run on a 4-station plan. So we have the headquarters, we have East Woburn, the west side, and the south end. As part of that long-term plan, we obviously wanted to rebuild the new Central Square headquarters fire station, which we've done. We did that as part of a plan that called for $30 million in bonding. About $23.5 million was used for the new headquarters in line with what we expected. And the idea was that the remaining $6.5 million would be used to renovate stations 4, 5, and 1. Part of that, at least informally, part of that discussion included the notion that if stations 2 and 3 were to be sold, that money could be used to help with the renovation of the other fire stations. It wasn't exactly prescribed in writing that would happen, but it was the general sense that whatever money could be made from the old fire stations could perhaps be used to renovate, the ones still in service. As you know, we auctioned off North Woburn. I think we got about $880,000 for that building and land. I think the new owner is already working on that. Station 3, Central Square, we wanted to take a little closer look at that one. Different situations in terms of the status of the building, the extent of rehabbing, the potential reuses, the locations, the geography. kind of different situations. So Station 2 progressed further. Station 3, I've talked to President Dillon about it. He would still like to have some community input, a neighborhood meeting perhaps, to understand what other options might exist for that building and that location. I think he's going to be moving forward with those neighborhood meetings shortly. And then we'll know what next steps are. As I mentioned earlier with the school building, the first step is the mayor seeking the authority to dispose. We got that in North Woburn. That's why it was auctioned. That is still pending in committee in the city council, that authority to dispose. And that'll happen, I would guess, after the neighborhood meetings take place. So assuming that that's the next step, the neighborhood meeting regarding Station 3, city council advises me what they would like to see happen next. We'll have a better idea of, where we stand with those buildings. The larger question is, essentially, is the remaining $6.5 million bonding capability enough to accomplish what I think we all agreed was necessary in terms of Station 4, Station 5, and Station 1. I've talked to the council president. I've talked to the fire chief. We've had a couple of meetings with the consultants that have helped us along the way with the fire renovation project. And I think we're at the point where we need to reopen that discussion in terms of whether the $6.5 million is enough to really make a difference at 4, 5, and 1. I think 1's in a better status than the others. It's a little newer, doesn't need as much, but 4 and 5, the closer we look, the more I think we realize they need. So I think next steps might be reopening that discussion with the council, revisiting the rest of the plan. I think we've done a great job implementing the first phases of the plan, but I think this next phase, what happens to 4, 5, and 1 is probably part of a larger discussion.
Okay, thank you. Because we're spending a lot more time outside as a community, there's lots of curiosity about some of our public spaces and things. And the capital budget did include some next step movement on a few projects. And I thought you could touch on some of those.
Yeah, the big one, I think, is the demolition of the old Hurl School. Again, common theme here with the answers, but we went through the process with that building that I just described. School committee determined they no longer needed it for educational purposes. The city looked at it to see if there was any other use, made the determination that there was not. There were neighborhood meetings on the best use of the property, and there was a consensus that might be an area where some sort of parkland, open space, playground could work best. We had partnerships with the state and the federal level. We've got some consultants on board, and we're well underway with a plan to create Hurl Park over there. So in order for that to happen, the first step is to tear the building down. So in this year's capital budget, one of the biggest requests was that demolition of that building. So that's going to happen this fiscal year, hopefully as soon as this fall or winter, and that will open up that area for the rest of that development of the park. Thankfully, a whole lot of the money that goes to pay for that park will be grant money. And there'll be, there's some city funding, obviously, but a big chunk of it will come from the federal government and the state government, which is much appreciated. And I think the outcome and the end result of Hurl Park will be beautiful. I think people will really, really enjoy it. So that's the big one, Hurl Park. We also have capital money in there to work on the Green Street Splash Park project, replacing the old pool with a splash park. Work is basically underway already. We've awarded the contract, and hopefully by this time next year, there'll be a splash park there somewhere around midsummer, including new bathrooms. So that's a big improvement. And then one more big project that we're hoping to finalize, or at least get the bulk of the work done this fiscal year is the skate park. Same area of the splash park, but on the other side of the Shamrock School, closer to the Liberty Ave side. So I think those are probably three of the bigger projects that the capital budget rather accounts for. And again, I have to say to Councilor Pappalardo and his fellow council members, I appreciate the support. These three projects in particular have a huge impact in the city, allow for our residents to enjoy themselves outside, provide a place for our youngsters to gather and enjoy themselves. And again, I really appreciate the support of the city council with that capital budget.
Thank you. Speaking of enjoying yourselves outside, we've had lots of discussions in the community and people reaching out to us about concerns about some rowdiness that happens at Library Field, in particular with young people. They're minors. I don't expect nor want you to, say anything specific about how that's being handled with, young people who have a right to privacy. But I thought, we get enough discussion around, and it might be helpful to just in generalities share your point of view about what we can and what we're doing to help.
Yeah, so the idea is that we have places in the city where people can enjoy themselves. They can be outside, they can be with their friends, they can enjoy the weather. Library Park in particular, if there's events going on, movies and music and games, just a fun time for people to be outside and enjoy themselves. And we'd like that opportunity to exist for everybody in the city, seniors down to youngsters. We want everyone to have the opportunity to enjoy what the city has to offer. Ideally, we'd love it to happen all at once. We'd like the seniors and the youngsters and everyone in between to be able to mingle and interact in a positive way. And most of the time that does happen. Occasionally, we have a bit of a conflict. And what you're describing is a situation with a small group of preteens, I'd say, who, they're riding their bikes, and to some extent, they're doing what any generation of preteens have always done, particularly when they're bored. But there have been some instances recently in the last year or so where some lines have been crossed, and a bit of disrespect has been exhibited, and some vandalism and stuff that's just not acceptable. So in working with recreation and the library and the police department, we're trying to reinforce that message of what's acceptable behavior and what isn't. I do appreciate that everybody is working together to try to make that happen. We're not being heavy-handed. We're trying to reinforce basic values of respect and how to interact with other people. And we're going to keep doing that. We understand that, there are residents at Library Place who want to be able to enjoy where they live. There are people who are spending time at Library Park playing softball and, just playing basketball and pickleball and going to movies and events. And they just want to be able to enjoy themselves. So we're striving for that middle ground where everybody gets to have a good time, but the boundaries of respect and not crossing over into somebody else's peace and enjoyment, is always respected and adhered to. So it's a work in progress. We do advise anyone who finds themselves in an uncomfortable position or they feel like they're being subjected to something disrespectful or inappropriate, by all means, call the police department. They're right across the street. They're happy to come over and help out. We've actually beefed up our presence there just to set the proper tone. I think it's had some positive impact, but it's a continuous work in progress. And we just want to make sure everybody has a chance to enjoy themselves without offending and being inappropriate to others.
Right. Thank you for all the catch up today. I appreciate it, Mike.
Sure. Thank you, Samantha.
Excellent. Next up, City Councilor Bill Pappalardo. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Samantha. I appreciate the offer to come on.
Yeah, I always think it's great to catch up. I hate to talk about this next topic because I get a little itchy and squirmy when I talk about rodents, but you have actually been a strong vocal supporter of, rodent control and education to our community and helping people get a handle on what is an unfortunate, a side effect of living in the city, sometimes even living in the country. I've had my fair share of mice in New Hampshire, out in the woods as well, but it's something that comes up quite a lot. And I thought it would be good to just sort of give you an opportunity to talk a little bit about some of the things we've done and things that we want to make sure that you want to make sure residents know are available to them.
Yep, that would be great. So what I've learned about this in the last couple of months is there's really no silver bullet here. When it comes to rodent control, it requires all the parties involved to stay vigilant and to work together. And the parties include the residents, number one, the commercial establishments, and also the city department. So from a resident standpoint, we've had some great interaction with some of the Board of Health and other internal folks, and they've been very helpful to educate the neighbors on different things and that sort of thing. So, number one is keeping their trash secured in barrels and minimize putting your trash out as trash bags whenever possible, because that could bring out more rodents. Bird feeders that are out there, they seem to be attracted to the bird feeders. So we're asking people to bring them inside at nighttime whenever possible. Compost bins and piles of grass clippings, they attract rodents. So again, we try to advise people to stay away from keeping piles of this stuff around. And then for those that have chicken coops out there, what we're asking them to do is to elevate at least 18 inches off the ground. So those are just a couple of items that are out there. There's more. I just kind of pull those off as quick do's and don'ts of how the residents should be acting. And then from a commercial standpoint, we need to ensure that the dumpsters have lids and they're closed tightly. That will significantly reduce the rodent population, and also from a commercial standpoint is good sanitation underneath all the appliances that are inside. And then there's definitely a part that the city departments have to play a big part in this as well, and it's all around communication. So we've been fortunate to have the Board of Health come out, Jack Fralick's come out on site in some of these locations. Jim Joyce, who's excellent and very knowledgeable in this area as well. He's been really, really helpful educating and advising residents around the do's and don'ts and the best practices. So those are kind of some of the quick hitters that are out there. There's no simple solution. As I said, there's no silver bullet. But as we work together within these three constituency groups, we can solve these problems.
Great. Thanks, Bill. I appreciate it. And for those who didn't get a chance to attend, there was a rodent control session that was an education session that was held, and I believe that recording is available now. It's not an edited recording; it's sort of a recording of the actual conversation as it went, but there's some good tips in there and well, so people can take a look at that if they're interested.
Yeah, Jim Joyce was the guy that did that session over at the library, and he's extremely knowledgeable, as well as Jack Fralick, and they really helped out the neighbors, and they have action plans in place to try to minimize this going forward. But it has to be all three legs of the stool to be able to get some success here.
Great. I know in your ward there's a couple of troubling intersections, a little challenging in some of them. I thought it might be a chance for you to give a little update on some of the things that are happening traffic wise.
That would be great. So the number one problem intersection in Ward 2 is Green and Nashua Street intersection. I'm sure anyone that's crossed paths with this realizes how dangerous it is over there. The Department of Transportation identified this intersection as one of the top 5 of crashes in metropolitan Boston. So there's definitely some issues that are going on there. And these aren't issues that are just surfacing now. They've been around for decades. Fortunately, Mayor Concannon helped us move through this process, and we have some funding that we are able to bring a consulting company in, take a look at the intersection, and they'll work in conjunction with the Mass Department of Transportation to come up with some short-term solutions and some longer-term solutions. Longer-term solutions are going to be very costly, and they're going to take a long time to get there. So what our goal is to put some kind of faster short-term steps in place to be determined what those steps are. And then as we move forward, if we can apply some of those steps to kind of minimize some of the problems that are out there, there's a good possibility we may be able to get some state funding to take on some of the longer-term approaches there to fully remediate the issues over there. But that's the number one intersection problem that we're having in this ward. And I think we've made great strides to start with. I mean, nothing's been physically done yet, but this company called TEC is in the process of completing a road safety audit. And they've basically put cameras out at the intersection. They've looked at traffic patterns. They've looked at traffic volume. They've done an in-depth analysis as to what is happening at this. So what they'll do is they'll take that data back, synthesize all of this, and then, as I said, come back with, some short-term solutions that we might get some fairly quick benefits from, and then come back with a longer-term solution as to how we could remediate the problem, to its fullest. So I'm really excited about that, because I know as I talk to neighbors out there in Ward 2 and around that section of town, it's the first thing that rolls off their lips. It's the first thing people want addressed. And I think we've done a really good job of trying to get some eyeballs on this, and hopefully we can come up with some type of shorter-term solution to start, and then a longer-term solution as we go forward.
Great. One of the things that we do as a city is we try and help our residents improve their quality of life. And we've talked about a couple of things, traffic and rodents and things, but some of it also comes in other forms. And one of the things that we're doing is helping people with job hunting. So helping both employers find quality talent that lives right here in our city, and also helping job seekers connect to employers right here and such. And so we are hosting a job fair that's coming up, and just thought I'd get your thoughts on what you're thinking of what we're doing that over the next few weeks as we prepare for that.
Yep. So I actually worked on the hiring side for many, many years, and it's really difficult to find good people. And from the other side of it, the employees that are trying to, the folks that are trying to get connected to the right companies, it's difficult to find the right fit. So I think this is phenomenal activity that we're doing here. So to give it a little bit of a plug and some exposure, the job fair is going to be held Wednesday, August 28th from 11 to 1 o'clock at the Woburn Elks, and that's on 295 Washington Street in Woburn. They've partnered with Mass Hire and the Woburn Chamber of Commerce to put this event on. It'll allow the folks to directly talk to several employers at the site, and they have really cool things like free resume help, LinkedIn workshops, free headshots. They have all these things, and on top of it, for some of the folks that are coming in, they have children. They have a kids corner that they're establishing that will allow for some help with the children as the interviews happen. So,
okay.
The contact out there is her name is Samantha Stone, and she's excellent. She has a whole lot of knowledge. I heard she's pretty knowledgeable about this, and you can reach out to Samantha on her Woburn City email address. But it's
awesome, Bill. And I didn't even have to pay him to say that, but thank you for doing that. One of the things you raised that I think is really valuable is we hear a lot of times, hey, I've applied for 1 million jobs and nobody calls me back. It's one of the reasons we wanted to do this in person. Part of what we pride ourselves on in our community is making our leadership available and accessible, and work really hard to be transparent. This is another way to sort of get out of the systems that automate some of the resumes and application process, and really just go meet employers, and employers meet potential employees and have some conversations and hopefully make some connections there.
I think it's a win-win for everybody out there. The more we do of this, the better off it is for both sides of the equation.
Yeah. Thank you. It's summertime, so hopefully I'm hoping you're doing some fun stuff outside or some fun restaurants and events and things. There's lots to do in Woburn. I've lived here a long time, and yet still every summer I find something new to try. What is something that you really enjoy that you think folks should check out?
Yeah. I mean, there's so, as you said, so many things happening here, from the Woburn Public Library. Let's just start there. So that's a beautiful historic building. They have a wonderful collection of books and resources, and they have lots of activities for all age groups. So that would be number one. And maybe that's
Yeah.
to some, that's not the most exciting place, but to some it is the most exciting place.
Yeah.
You look at Hom Pond, that's the queen, the jewel of the city, in my opinion. And you can go out for a nice walk. They have kayaks there. You can rent
Yes.
kayaks up until Labor Day. It's actually something that my wife and I have been wanting to do, and we're going to do it sometime before Labor Day to get out there because it looked really peaceful out on Hom Pond.
It's awesome. I went out with a friend and her two of her kids, and I tell you, we had a beautiful time. It's amazing how little away from the parking lot you go, and it's just nature, right? It's just you don't even hear the cars going by anymore. You just see turtles and birds and wildlife and the water, and it's really great experience. I think you'll enjoy it.
Yeah, and for those that don't have their own kayak, like I said, you can rent the kayaks right there.
Exactly.
So it's
Yeah.
really, really cool thing for those outdoorsy type people. There's
Yeah.
picnicking and fishing and all that stuff that has there. There's fantastic bird watching. If you kind of
Yes.
go to the back of the pond, and there's a little loop that you can take where there's lots of bird watchers that are out there with snapping pictures, and it's a really, really cool place. And then the other thing, my daughter went over there the other day, walked the kids around the pond, and it was hot. As you know, it's been really, really hot. And she looked up and she saw the splash park up at the old Clap School. And she
Yep.
brought the kids over there and they loved it. They thought it was so great up there. So it's really a great place there. And then, of course, the summer concerts that they have there, again, catering to all ages. My own opinion is you should top that off with an ice cream at the end of the day, at a Better Breakers or something like that. I mean, I think there's
I knew I'd liked you, Bill. Ice cream is my real weakness. I could eat ice cream every day.
And then the last thing that I have to mention is the outdoor music that happens at the Brickyard. That's on Wednesday nights. And again, that's a really cool thing. So there's all these different things that, tend to, depending on what you're into and what you want to do, there's lots and lots and lots of different options here. So again, Woburn is the greatest place in the world for all ages. And that's just a few small examples.
I love it. And, one of the things I was just talking to somebody today at lunch, reminding that the library not only lends books, but they have a whole library of things like puzzles and games and all kinds of things. So especially for those rainy days, it's a great opportunity to take something home or explore something in the library itself. So all great suggestions, Bill. Thanks for bringing them up. Before I let you go and we wrap up today, is there anything else going on in Ward 2 that you'd like to share with us?
A couple of things that the mayor had mentioned the splash park that's happening at Green Street. And again, I've got a bunch of calls on this, so I'll just say it out, is that they're in the process of doing some construction down there as we speak. And unfortunately, the pool is going to go away, but there's going to be a really neat splash park and bathrooms that are going to go in there. I hope they can get ready for the full season next year. Maybe it drags out a little longer, but I know the crew will do the best that they can to get it up there. So that's one thing. And unfortunately, there's nothing there for them right now, but go ahead over to the old Clap School, or there's other places you can go that let you cool off a little bit. So that would be one thing. And then the second thing is just for awareness. A few weeks back, I got a call. If you're walking into the Studio Cafe, there's a street right next door that's called Buell Place, Buell Place. And there's some safety concerns over there. So what we're doing is we're gathering up some of the owners that own the property back there. That's not a city street, it's private property. And we're gathering the owners. We're meeting there tomorrow afternoon, and we're going to go out and take a look and figure out what is it we can do to enhance the safety of that area. Because when you're walking down that sidewalk, and there could be cars coming out of that little road there that makes it dangerous. So the owners of the buildings have been fantastic to work with. And we're gonna go out, take a walk out there and hopefully get a plan as to how we can make that safer. So
Sounds great. Thank you for doing that. And again,
those
as you
are a couple of extra things that are happening out there, but there's a lot going on.
That's great. And it's great to see another way that the community comes together with different people, business owners coming together and trying to address an issue that is affecting folks that may not even own property there. So that's excellent, Bill. Thank you for joining me today. Woburn, as always, please continue to take good care of each other.